All right, so for the Patriots, I'm going to preface it by saying
you're already being advocated as we speak, by the way, on Chris Godwin. So
yeah. Oh, great. I'm going to preface this by saying, and I don't know that they can do this in one off season. I've said it before here multiple times. I think they need to turn over half their roster. And I don't know how feasible that is to do in one off season.
I would say more.
Right. I'm being kind. I think I remember telling people when I did the final 53-man roster projection for Boston Sports Journal last year, I got to like 40 and I was like, okay. And then I'm like, yeah, I guess you need depth at defensive tackle. You keep this guy and that guy. You need depth at corner. You keep this guy and that guy. But it was like in years past, when they were good, even when, whatever, Bill screwed up the draft and all those sorts of things, there was always 4 or 5 guys you looked at and go, that's a tough cut. Like, he's going to play for somebody else.
Yep.
Last year, I didn't feel that way. And then you saw how they reacted. They had to claim guys off waivers. DeMontre Jacobs, they claim him off waivers at the end of August. He starts 13 games at right tackle. Like, that's the position your roster's in. So I've been advocating for a while that the Patriots should take the 2000-2001 offseason approach with Belichick and Scott Pioli, where they threw mid-level to lower-end money at a bunch of NFL veterans in free agency. I think they signed 17 or 18 guys. Again, that's the Mike Vrabel class, Mike Compton, David Patton. Who else am I forgetting? Roman. There was a lot of players that they threw money at, and most of them carved out roles, and some carved out, like Vrabel, massive roles and became cornerstone pieces. I don't know that you can do that now with free agency the way it works, and the lack of, again, there's just the list is very uninspiring, but that'd be sort of the way I'm thinking. But because they have the money, as I mentioned, there'll be some swings. I think Chris Godwin, and I just tweeted this again, we were taping this on Friday morning, talked to a couple of league sources who are like, they're going to be the driver on that bus. And that means that a lot of people thought he was going to get around 25 million because, again, it's not an overwhelming class. And they think the Patriots could drive that thing up to 28, 29 million. So is Chris Godwin that kind of player? No, but you have that money. There you go. So Chris Godwin, to me, that would be, he's a great culture fit. Immediately gives Jalen Pope, Javon Baker, Pop Douglas someone to look at and say, oh, that's how it's done. That's how I need to behave. That's how I need to be a pro. And that's how I can further my career. So he's the first one. I think based on the Christian Barmore, and again, he's working out, as I reported before everybody else, like he's working out, but working out is not playing football. And the way the Patriots talked about him at the combine, they weren't like, oh yeah, like we're excited. Like they're still in that same place where it's like, we don't know. Blood clots twice. Like we don't know. So to me, you have to do something on the defensive line. Milton Williams is probably the most popular player in free agency in terms of what teams are looking for. Yeah. He gives them, they want to be an attacking team, a one-gap team, which is not how they've played for eons under Belichick or even, last year under Giardi. He's that guy. Now, is he a 90% snaps guy? He never had to be in Philly. He was under 50%, but this is free agency. This is what happens. He not only gives you someone who can disrupt next to Barmore, but if Barmore's not there, he'll have to take on a bigger role, but at least you're feeling like we have a much better player than anything we tried to do last year to fill that gap. So Milton Williams, and that to me is a day one, like just go in there. Here's the check. Go for it. I know a lot of people are talking about Ronnie Stanley. And look, they can offer Ronnie Stanley more money. I don't get the sense in talking to people, and whatever, it's still when they start throwing money around, when he starts getting an idea that maybe the Patriots are willing to pay him $30 million a year for a couple of years guaranteed, like maybe that changes things. But the sense I get on Ronnie Stanley is he wants to remain in Baltimore, and Kansas City appears to be positioning themselves, even though they're still quote unquote over the cap, to make a run at him as well to try to fix their tackle situation. Again, it'll be less money than the Patriots could offer, but the sense is I get that he wants to win. He's at the end of his career. He's 31 years old or about to be. So scratch that off. Cam Robinson then becomes the guy, and it's not an awesome. He was a high pick for Jacksonville.
Tyron Smith's corpse.
Yeah. So again, it's not awesome, but they understand they can't go into this upcoming season with the offensive line situation the way it was. And even if that means overspending on someone who might be an average starter at best, maybe slightly below average, if they can get competition there and some stability, I think that's something they're willing to do. I'll mention another name that sort of has flown under the radar, but he filled in for San Francisco when Trent Williams was out last year. Jalen Moore. He's 27 years old. He's not going to break the bank, but again, has some starting experience. That's what I see them doing a lot on the offensive line, finding pieces that have started games in this league that there's still, I don't know whether you would call upside or there's still some room to grow with that player, not the 32-year-old stopgap. People were clamoring for them to trade for Joe Tooney. Joe's 32. Like, I understand it. He's much better than anything you have, but they're just like, we're not ready for that. Essentially, we're not going to be that kind of team. So, sort of keep that in mind for tiers. I don't think that Chris Godwin should be the only wide receiver they add. I think Cooper Kupp makes a lot of sense there. Darius Slayton makes a lot of sense there, and both guys are pros. Obviously, Slayton more of an outside receiver, Kupp more of an inside receiver, which could create some duplicity with Chris Godwin if you land him, which is why I'm kind of leaning in the Slayton direction. Slayton's probably going to cost $10 million a year. Explosive player, though, and as I mentioned, tremendous locker room guy. The Giants absolutely love him. He is someone that, again, you can point to the young players on the roster and say, this is how you do it. This is how you stick around in the league. This is how you can be the kind of player that we envision you being. So I look at Darius Slayton. I'm going to dip into the Jets linebacking core. We talked about this.
Yeah.
Damian Sherwood getting closer and closer to free agency without a deal from the Jets. I think the Patriots obviously have more money to offer Damian Sherwood than the Jets would, should he get there. It's clear that Mike Vrabel has a type. I talk about penetrating up front. He's had smaller interior linebackers, David Long being first and foremost among. David Long was an absolute wrecking ball for the Titans when he was healthy. Damian Sherwood makes a lot of sense. If not Damian Sherwood, Robert Spillane from the Vegas Raiders. Same thing, 6'1", 225-ish. A really good year for them last year. Not going to break the bank, going to cost less because he's 4 years older than Sherwood. That's a name to keep in mind. That's a name that I would be interested in if I was the Patriots. I think Malcolm Kuntz is another one where you need to bolster your pass rush. Milton Williams would give you that on the interior. If you add Malcolm Kuntz, assuming that he checks out healthy, and remember, he got hurt in August, I believe it was. So he's had essentially have a year between training camp to get that knee right. He was tracking as a player who was going to make a lot of money in free agency based on his 2023 season. Now maybe you can get him for a little bit cheaper because there isn't, he's coming off the injury. There's a question there. But I think what you saw on tape in 2023 would be an excellent fit for the Patriots in 2025, give you a little bit more juice in the pass rush. And when we talk about the Patriots, not only do they have all this money, they don't have any guys that they need to re-sign. They did their ridiculous over-signing of a bunch of guys on the 4-13 roster 2 years ago. This year, the biggest names in free agency for them are Dietrich Wise, who's at the end, Jonathan Jones, who's at the end. Like, if they're back, fine. You're not paying a lot of money for either one of them. Both of them are going to know that they're in part-time roles, but in general, you have this clear pathway to do whatever you want. And I'll give you one more name that I think is reasonable, coming off a rough year for a lot of reasons in San Francisco. Javarius Ward, the corner. And you're going to have to pay the suck tax because you're not a good football team. And I know San Francisco wasn't a good football team last year, but he's become accustomed to playing on teams that can contend. You're not there yet. He had the tragic passing of his young daughter. It was a tough year for him, and I think you can understand why. Is he someone who, on a one-year deal at $10 million, you line him up opposite Christian Gonzalez? You have some other depth there at cornerback, and Alex Austin, who you brought back as an exclusive rights free agent, Isaiah Bolden, who was a late-round pick who played some late last year, and say, like, we've got our defense back to a place now where we're not top 5. Maybe we're not even top 10, but we sure as hell ain't 30, 31, 32 like we were last year. And if you get the proper growth from Drake May and some of the younger players, and you assume much better coaching this year, then all of a sudden you are a 7 or 8 win football team, and you've got this thing pointed in the right direction. And God knows it's been pointed in the wrong direction for multiple years. So again, there are some big ticket items there. And then there are some more mid-level types. I still think like
Mike, I have a few ones to throw you.
I was going to wrap up. I was going to say maybe my ideal scenario is you hit on a couple of those bigger ticket items just because you have such a pressing need in a couple. Well, you have pressing needs in a lot of spots, but in a couple spots, and then sign 12 to 15 guys in free agency in that middle tier, and just say we've increased the level of competition. We don't have to run out DeMontre Jacobs for 13 starts. If Vidarian Lowe is stinking at left tackle, we have a better option. Or if we can't figure out left guard, there's a veteran guy that we signed for $5 million, $7 million that he's playing. And you guys, sorry, we're done with the development crap. You're out, he's in, and we move on.
Yeah, a couple of names that I thought about, for the Patriots make sense. I don't think they'll be in the DJ Reed sweepstakes, and they shouldn't be, to be honest with you. I just don't think it fits their timeline. Jordan Lewis probably doesn't fit their timeline either. That said, does take the football away a lot. He could be one that's a 2-year deal. Him opposite Gonzalez. Gonzalez, it's a good group. I don't hate that for them at all. Terrell Bernard, by the way, extended as we were recording, 4 years, $50 million. I do wonder for them, do they look to add a running back or do they look to the draft? If I'm them, I prefer to look to the draft based on you're already paying Ramondre, and this is a great draft class. I mentioned some receivers there. You mentioned the bigger names. I also think you mentioned Darius Slayton. Like, they should be a Slayton team too. They should be a team that's like, if we're going to add a Godwin, we need a guy's going to take the top off, because Polk's certainly not going to do that. Yeah, Pop Douglas can, but he's more of like I just don't know if that's his game.
Well, yeah, there has been buzz since the combine, or right around the combine, and then after the combine, that Mike Vrabel and Javon Baker, their 4th round pick, who had 1 catch and didn't know where to go and was late and did all these things, that they've already made a connection. And there's some, when they say this, and I think it was in the Andrew Callahan, Doug Kyde story in the Boston Herald, quoting sources saying people in the league believe Baker is their most talented receiver. Physically, yes, he is. There's no question. There's just a lot more that comes with it than that. And so, I mean, he wilted in every scenario last year. When they were ready to play him in London, he's late in London and gets scratched. He never understood the playbook. He was pouty, moody. Like, he was very unprofessional, which he's immature, which was one of the reasons why he didn't go first, second round. That's why he went in the 4th round, because of all these things. So they can say this, and Vrabel has had a history of sort of connecting with certain players like this. So maybe, but until he gets on the field and actually does it, I'm not counting on that. And that's why I think you're right. Darius Slayton, he's your X. Bingo, go.
2 other names. One, actually, I'll just give you one more, and then we can move on to the stuff around the league. Charles Omenihu, 7 sacks in 2023, 5 in 2022. I thought he was going to be due for a big payday, like on this upcoming year, and then obviously misses the year, gets hurt, has a suspension coming up. That said, he is a perfect buy low guy for the Patriots. Of like, hey, we're stacking a winning pedigree.
Mm-hmm.
Felt like he was about to really I thought he was going to be a 10-sack guy this year. Like, coming out of last year, I was like, whoa, like Kareem and Karlaftis, like, what? How do they keep doing it? He is one, again, Charles Omenihu. I have him for the Jets as well, as like, you want to add some edge depth as your 3rd edge rusher in a rotation, but like upside, he is certainly one of those names to watch there.
Yeah, a very intriguing name. You're right. His career arrow was pointed up, and then the injury, the suspension, whatnot. That is an absolutely classic scenario. And of course, again, buy low, but you have so much money that if someone buys low and says $5 million, you can say 7. And that should be enough to convince a player to take the trip to Foxboro, Massachusetts.